Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Let me check my volume. Volume is good. Guys, if you enjoy what I'm putting down, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. I repeat that at the beginning. I try to repeat it at the end also when I remember it. When I was in, I think it was 2008. I was going from Egypt across land to Israel to Jordan in order to take a flight to Nepal. Initially, it was supposed to be an overland flight. Initially it was supposed to be a flight to get to Nepal, but I decided to go overland because I said I have nowhere to be, I have nowhere to go per se. We have nowhere to go. Anywhere you go is essentially where you are. And in that case, I decided to go overland for shits and giggles because I could. I crossed into Israel at this point, not necessarily politically awake, but aware enough to vote for Ralph Nader and aware enough to not get involved in conversations of U.S. policy in that part of the world, either with Israelis or with Palestinians. Regardless of what I wanted to do, this conversation ended up happening just kind of organically, just from the situation to which I found myself. There will be inquisitive Israelis that hear me talk about my foray through Palestine, in which case they want to have a conversation, ask me, where's Palestine? Where's Palestine? Trying to make this point that there is no Palestine. I understand your point, but you know goddamn well that there are people who are there in that space that you are occupying. Beyond that point, one of the people that I met on my travels, young woman, maybe 20s, early 20s, she was Belgian Palestinian, and I needed to go from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv because for the time I was in Jerusalem, or the time I was in Israel, I needed a visa in order to get into Jordan, because otherwise I couldn't get into Jordan without a visa. There's some places you as an American citizen, just by virtue of being an American citizen, you go in, you got a visa. No fuss, no muss. If you decide to go to London, where you are is where you are. They don't necessarily harass you about it. Your visa is almost just automatic. Going into Jordan, not so much. And so I needed to get a Jordanian visa, meaning I needed to go to the embassy in Tel Aviv. I did not have cash, and the Belgian Palestinian who was there with me fronted me the cash, and my cab driver was a complete and utter asshole, and so I didn't necessarily want to go back with that asshole. And she was extremely attractive, I was extremely single, and you know, I'm a guy, and being red-blooded American, I decided that I wanted to go with her. I'm with her. That was the only time I think I've ever said I'm with her. We take a bus through Jerusalem back to Bethlehem. And before getting, I say, hey, is it safe? You know, I'm an American. I'm not crazy. Is it safe for me to go to areas of Palestine in this way? She said, I'm going. You can come with if you like. And me, this is being somewhat optimistic from the standpoint of my own safety, I said, sure. Let's go. We get on the bus. She's ferocious and beautiful in the way that she would go about being idealistic to what I consider to be somewhat of an obscene extent, but nevertheless idealistic, and having loud conversations about the problems associated with Israel from the standpoint of her. She has dual citizenship, Belgian and Palestinian, meaning she can go back and forth, in a way that made me dramatically uncomfortable, seeing there was a lot of soldiers with guns all around me. Nevertheless, she was again ferocious and brave, and she would do this regardless of where she was. When we got to areas of Bethlehem, we're walking through Bethlehem, there's a dramatic difference between what Bethlehem looks like versus what Israel looks like, if that makes sense. Like, Jerusalem looks like Little America. Eilat looks like Little America. Tel Aviv looks like fucking Beverly Hills. And then you get to areas of Palestine and you look like you fell off the earth. Complete departure from what areas of Israel is versus areas of what would be considered Bethlehem. And I know Bethlehem is considered to be Israel because Israel has occupied the entire territory, but you know what I mean. There's a dramatic difference in where you are when you're in Bethlehem versus where you are when you're in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv or Eilat. I'm being a greedy bastard eating corn that a nice gentleman gave me the best piece when he found out I was an American, and not paying attention. I kind of hear somebody cursing, but it's one of those things where you hear it where you're not really paying attention to it, so you don't necessarily, it doesn't click that he's cursing in English. Before I am aware, she snaps away from me and she goes attacks the guy who's cursing, scares the utter shit out of him. She wouldn't take shit from Israelis, nor would she take shit from Palestinians. He was mad that she wasn't covering her neck. She wasn't taking any shit off of him. She was a medic. She worked in a health clinic, helping with this idea of Palestinian births. With the return, or right of return, and the protest that was associated with the Jerusalem and right of return, all these things pretty much ended up around the same place. Israeli soldiers shot over 2,500 people. Of that, over 100, I think it was like 200, were murdered, or around 200 were murdered. That includes women, children, and in some cases babies, apparently, or at the very least in one case, a dangerous baby that was gassed to death. One of those people, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because, you know, I don't know if she was still there. Like, I don't know how long she decided to stay in that area of the globe. I don't know if she decided to stay there because she thought she could help. I don't know if she decided to stay there because she thought she could do some good in that particular community. But during the protests, during the bombings, during the quote-unquote intifadadas where they go in and murdering all these people using dumb bombs and dumb weapons, even if we're talking about what's taking place, or what was taking place where they killed over 100 and something people, shooting 2,500 or over 2,500, I don't know if she was there for that. I don't know what she's doing today. I don't even know if she's alive today. I don't know if Israel murdered, if she was one of the people that they murdered over the course of those years. I don't know. I see a story about another medic from Palestine. And in this case, this woman, 21 years old, looks like a goddamn angel. And they keep calling her angel because, let's be honest, she's absolutely gorgeous. And beyond being gorgeous, she was literally there for the benefit of helping others. I always say that just because you do good doesn't necessarily mean good follows you. And in this case, good did not follow her. How do you pronounce the name? Razan al-Najjar, 21 years old, goes to assist a Palestinian that was essentially shot or murdered. One of the 2,500 or one of the 100 and so. And just like other journalists who clearly depicts the fact that they're journalists that have been shot, just like other medics or doctors clearly depicting the fact that they were medics or doctors, that they were shot, she clearly depicted as a medic going there to help someone else who was either wounded or killed, one of the 2,500, the statistic at this point. She herself was shot in the chest, and she was murdered by one of the Israeli snipers. This is bad enough in and of itself. This is an utter tragedy, something that shouldn't take place. Ultimately, a lot of these things should not have taken place. The woman was murdered, literally murdered, trying to help somebody else who themselves were probably in the process of being murdered. To add insult to injury, however, the Israelis turned around and made a video of her, edited a video, in order to make it seem as if she was doing this for Hamas and that she was being a human shield for Hamas. Literally editing and releasing a video making it as if the woman was a human shield. This woman who went out there literally to help and assist one of the other people who Israel had already shot or murdered, and herself was shot in the chest. And for whatever reason, I have this image in my head of this 21-year-old bleeding out, being shot in the chest by some Israeli sniper. Jumped the shark and uses her for propaganda purposes. This is pretty fucking amazing. She wasn't out there for Hamas. There was no indication that she was out there for Hamas. And any editing of the video to make it look as such is deliberate in order to conceal the crimes that have taken place. This is almost like somebody who murdered somebody and then puts their clothes over their face because they don't want to look at the fact that they murdered the person. This consciousness of guilt and trying to change the scene and change the perceptions of the people who are around it to make themselves seem less guilty. But you are guilty. The International Criminal Court may not call it, and you may get protection from the United States from the standpoint of the Security Council, but the rest of the world understands that you are utterly and completely guilty. Are you shitting me? It is bad enough that you murdered her. It is bad enough that you shot the 25 people. It is 500 people. It is bad enough that you are militarily occupying somebody else's soil. But then to jump the shark, if you're so confident in what you're doing is being right and just, why are you editing the video to make it seem as if reality is not what reality was? This is the Independent. Israeli army edits video of Palestinian medic, its troops shot dead, misleading, shows she was a human shield for Hamas. Think about that. Shoot a 21-year-old in the chest as she was assisting other Palestinians who themselves were being shot in the knees, in the head, or in the groin. And she gets shot in the chest. And the Israelis use her for propaganda purposes. It's bad enough they murder her. They're also going to use her for propaganda purposes. To some degree, in an odd way, getting across a certain consciousness of guilt in what they did. The Israeli Defense Force has been widely criticized for releasing a video in which footage of the killed Palestinian medic, murdered Palestinian medic Razan al-Najjar has been edited in order to portray her as not an angel, quote unquote. The 21-year-old was shot in the chest by an Israeli Defense Force sniper during the protests on Gaza, Israeli border on June 1st as she attended wounded protesters. On Thursday, several Israeli government and army officials tweeted the video named Hamas use of human shields must stop, which shows part of an interview Ms. Najjar gave with Lebanese Al Main TV, where she says she was acting as a human shield. In the full clip, however, the young woman goes on to say that she was present as a protest to save the wounded at the front lines. She does not mention Hamas, the militant group which controls the Gaza Strip. They lied. They lied. They utterly lied. Outright and complete propaganda. That's gross. That's beyond gross. If you want to see human shields, here are human shields. These are instances of human shields. The day Israel used a boy aged 13 as a human shield. Oh, how brave. How brave. These brave Israeli soldiers using boys and children as human shields. How fucking brave. Let's keep going. IDF soldiers convicted of using an 11-year-old as human shield. Oh, it gets younger. 11. An 11-year-old boy is a human shield. How brave. These brave Israeli soldiers. The most moral army in the world. Look at this. Look at this. These brave Israeli soldiers with children as human shields. Palestinians tortured, children tortured, used as shields by Israel. UN says. The United Nations says. Those are instances of human shields. She was not an instance of a human shield. She was there purely for the benefit of trying to protect the protesters who were there fighting for their right of return. Look, let's be honest. Let's be very honest for the moment. A piece of land is taken by forces outside of the people of that piece of land. Jews started to settle in that land. Mind you, the land is already settled. A dog and pony show takes place, and I'm fast forwarding, but a dog and pony show takes place. And I suspect it's a dog and pony show using momentum or political momentum, the same political momentum where Republicans cared about the debt and Democrats cared about the poor. At one point, they did. At one point, you did have people like FDR who cared about the poor, or people like Eisenhower who cared about the debt, raised taxes up to like 90% on the rich in order to pay down the debt. You had those people who actually cared about the debt and cared about the poor. The political momentum allowed them to just kind of tick along using the same political jargon that they use without necessarily having the actual reality associated with the political jargon. So then you get to the current Democratic Party, who for the most part is just as corrupt and just as co-opted as the Republican Party, and the Republican Party being the same Republican Party, they just don't necessarily care about the debt. They're completely owned by the top 1%. That same political momentum eventually came, or I would argue, from the same Israeli-Palestinian conflict. At one point, you might have had a situation where these guys were actually trying to solve the issue. The tepidness of Obama from the standpoint of doing anything from the Israeli standpoint or Israeli-Palestinian conflict standpoint, where you have literally thousands of Palestinians being killed, with 80% of which, I think it was like over 2,000 being killed, with 80% of which being civilians. Nothing done. Obama allows this tepid measure that has no force of anything to go through the Security Council, and even then Israel howled, murdering people in mass, and they're howling at the most tepid of pricks, most tepid of measures. The reality of this situation is that the United States has been colluding with Israel. There is a real clear side that the United States is on. This is similar to Hillary Clinton owning and controlling the DNC while at the exact same token pretending as if she's running a fair race. There's no fairness or honesty associated with this at all. The United States has given Israel billions each year. In addition to giving billions, they know that they're a nuclear power, and yet they complain and bitch and moan talking about other forces in the region starting an arms race. Well, somebody in that region already has nuclear weapons, but the United States doesn't seem to care. Somebody continues to steal more land that bucks this idea of international law. The United States pretends as if they're in some kind of negotiation, and again, don't seem to care. Let's be honest with what this is. This is not a fair process where you have this kind of fair negotiation in order to try to come to some kind of settlement. You had a president that was tepid on this issue, that wouldn't say really anything about it, only would give this kind of slight nod to, hey, we don't like it when you guys steal that land and kill people like that, but was never willing to do anything about it, such as holding the funding or withdrawing support. The other president comes in is just, ironically, a shade darker than the previous president on this issue, essentially moving the embassy to Jerusalem, something that all of the other presidents say they were going to do. This president actually did. And yet they howled about that, Democrats, despite the fact that they also said they were going to do the exact same thing. And the relationship between Hillary Clinton and Netanyahu was just as close as the relationship between Donald Trump and Netanyahu. And yet they complain. Both parties, to some degree, captured. We've done, talking about the world community, a magnificent disservice to the people who are living in that region of the world, who are under occupation, who are in an apartheid state, who are literally in an open-air ghetto, and who the rest of the world, as they get killed, as Israelis quote-unquote mow the lawn, as they torture kids, as they use kids as shields, we wring our hands and do nothing. Well, one of these have just been killed. And again, as most likely the rest of the world would do nothing. And Israel has jumped the shark and used this person for political ends, for propaganda effect, to make it look as if Hamas used this woman as a shield when she was there as a medic. This is gross. This is over the top gross, even for the murderous regime of the Israeli government. I'll leave it here. This should never happen, by the way. And the idea that we're supporting this is that much more embarrassing to me. I'll leave it here. Have a good one.